They thought humiliating me at my sister's engagement party in front of 72 guests would finally break me into submission. I walked out covered in red wine, mascara running down my face, while they laughed and clinked champagne glasses. What they didn't know was that I had already sent 3 emails from the bathroom. By sunrise, federal agents were knocking on their door, and the family empire my father built on lies was crumbling faster than their fake smiles could hold up. My name is Claire Montgomery, and for 28 years, I believed that being the family disappointment was just my role to play. My older sister Victoria was the golden child, beautiful, charismatic, engaged to a hedge fund manager named Preston Hall III. The kind of man my parents worshipped because his last name came with Roman numerals and a trust fund. I was the financial analyst who asked too many questions, the daughter who chose a state school over an Ivy League, the one who wore practical flats to family dinners while Victoria glided in on Louboutins. My father, Richard Montgomery, owned Montgomery Capital Management, a boutique investment firm in Manhattan that catered to ultra-wealthy clients. My mother, Diane, spent her days on charity boards and her evenings reminding me that I was wasting my potential working for a competitor firm instead of joining the family business. But I had my reasons for staying away. Good reasons that I kept locked in a password-protected folder on my laptop, along with 6 months of research, bank statements I had no business having access to, and email chains that would make a prosecutor salivate. The engagement party was held at the Meridian Club in Greenwich, Connecticut. Not just any country club, but the one where senators played golf and Supreme Court justices attended galas. Victoria had planned it for months, obsessing over every detail from the imported French roses to the string quartet that cost more than most people's cars. I arrived alone, wearing a navy dress that my mother would inevitably call too simple and carrying a gift I knew Victoria wouldn't appreciate. My father greeted me at the entrance with his politician's smile, the one that never reached his eyes when he looked at me. "Claire, you made it." He didn't hug me. We stopped pretending years ago. "Wouldn't miss it," I lied, scanning the crowd. 72 guests, I counted quickly. Partners from my father's firm, clients with 9-figure portfolios, Victoria's sorority sisters who married into old money, and Preston's family who looked like they stepped out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. My mother appeared beside me, already critiquing. "You couldn't have worn something with color? This is a celebration, Claire. Not a funeral." "I think she looks lovely." The voice came from behind me, familiar and unexpected. I turned to see Marcus Chen, my former colleague from Davidson and Price, the firm where I currently worked. We had dated briefly 2 years ago, before my family made it clear that a first-generation Chinese-American analyst wasn't their vision for my future. My father had actually used the phrase, "not our kind," during that particular argument. "Marcus, I didn't know you were invited. Preston and I were roommates at Wharton." He smiled, but there was something careful in his eyes. "Can we talk later? Privately?" Before I could answer, Victoria swept over in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and champagne-induced confidence. "Claire, you came! And you brought Marcus?" Her tone made it clear she remembered exactly why we broke up and enjoyed the awkwardness. "He's Preston's friend, Vicky, not my +1. "Of course." She examined my dress with barely concealed disdain. "Well, come in, come in. Daddy's about to make a toast." The party was exactly what I expected. Excessive, performative, designed to show off rather than celebrate. I found myself near the bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water and checking my phone every few minutes. The emails I sent from the office yesterday had gone to 3 people: Margaret Sullivan at the SEC, David Park at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and my personal lawyer, Janet Rodriguez. Each email contained attachments, lots of them. "You look like you're expecting bad news," Marcus said, appearing beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "I don't drink anymore. Not around my family." He set both glasses down. "Smart. Listen, Claire, I need to tell you something about your father's firm." My pulse quickened. "What about it?" "Davidson was asked to consult on a potential acquisition of Montgomery Capital. I was on the due diligence team." He lowered his voice. "The numbers don't add up. Someone's been cooking the books, and it's sophisticated. Offshore accounts, shell companies in the Caymans, client funds being moved around like a shell game." I tried to flag it to the partners, but the deal fell through before I could finish the report. "When was this?" 4 months ago. I've been worried about you, Claire. If this comes out and you're working there. I'm not working there. I've never worked there. But your family association is enough to destroy a career in finance. You know that. I did know that. I also knew exactly what Marcus was describing because I had been documenting the same thing for half a year. The difference was, I had evidence. Bank statements from my father's personal accounts that my mother had accidentally left in a folder at their house during Christmas. Client reports I had photographed when I visited the office to drop off Victoria's birthday gift. Email threads I had access to because my father, in a moment of rare technological incompetence, had used my old laptop to check his work email and never logged out. What I discovered made me physically sick. My father wasn't just managing money poorly. He was running a Ponzi scheme that made Bernie Madoff look like an amateur. Fake returns, falsified statements, new investor money paying old investor returns. The whole house of cards depended on constant new capital, and according to the documents I had, they were running out of new marks. Marcus, I need you to do me a favor. Anything. Whatever happens tonight, I need you to be a witness. Can you do that? He looked confused but nodded. Of course. Claire, what's going on? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed, and my father's voice boomed through the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The crowd gathered around as my father stood on the small stage, arm around Victoria, Preston beaming beside them. My mother watched with the satisfied smile of a woman whose plan was coming together. Tonight, we celebrate not just the union of two wonderful young people, but the joining of two families. The Montgomerys and the Halls have a long history of success, integrity, and service to our community. I almost laughed at the word integrity. Instead, I pulled out my phone and checked my email. Margaret Sullivan had responded, "Received. Reviewing now. Stay safe." My father continued, building to his big announcement. And I'm thrilled to share that Preston has agreed to join Montgomery Capital as a partner, bringing his expertise and, of course, his family's considerable investment portfolio to our firm. There it was, the real reason for this party. Preston wasn't just marrying Victoria. He was the new investor my father desperately needed to keep the scheme running. The Hall Family Trust was worth an estimated $400 million. That was a lot of fake returns my father could generate before the whole thing collapsed. I looked at Preston, really looked at him. He had no idea. He thought he was marrying into success, not fraud. My father raised his glass. To Victoria and Preston, and to the future of Montgomery Capital. To the future, the crowd echoed. I didn't raise my glass. I stood there, phone in hand, watching my family toast to a future that was going to implode in less than 12 hours. That's when my mother noticed. She always noticed when I wasn't performing my role correctly. She crossed the room with quick, sharp steps, her smile frozen in place. "Claire, why aren't you toasting your sister?" "I don't feel like celebrating fraud, Mother." Her face went white, then red. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." My father had finished his toast and was making his way toward us, sensing trouble the way sharks sense blood in water. Victoria followed, Preston trailing behind her, looking confused. "Claire." My father's voice was low, dangerous. "This is neither the time nor the place for your dramatics." Dramatics? Is that what you call it when someone points out that Montgomery Capital is a house of cards built on fake investment returns and client money that doesn't exist? The guests near us stopped talking. Conversations died in ripples as people turned to stare. "You need to leave." My mother's voice shook. "Now, I'm not done." My father grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. "Yes, you are. You're embarrassing this family with your paranoid delusions. Let go of me. Not until you apologize to your sister and get out of here." I tried to pull away. He held tighter. Marcus started moving toward us, but Preston reached us first. "Mr. Montgomery, maybe we should take this somewhere private." "Stay out of this, Preston. This is between me and my ungrateful daughter who can't stand to see her sister happy." Victoria's face was twisted with something between embarrassment and rage. "Why do you always do this, Claire? Why do you always have to ruin everything?" "I'm not ruining anything. I'm trying to save Preston from making the biggest mistake of his life." That's when my father snapped. He grabbed the glass of red wine from the nearest table and threw it in my face. The cold liquid hit me like a slap, soaking my hair, my dress, running down my neck in burgundy streams. The room went completely silent. "Get out!" His voice was ice. "Get out of my sight. You are no longer welcome in this family." I stood there, dripping wine, mascara burning my eyes, and looked at the 72 witnesses. Some looked shocked. Most looked uncomfortable. A few looked satisfied, like this was the entertainment they had secretly hoped for. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the victim. "How could you do this to us, Claire? On your sister's special day?" Victoria was crying, but not because she felt bad for me. "I hate you. I've always hated you. You're jealous and bitter and you can't stand that I have everything you'll never have." Preston put his arm around her but was looking at me with something like pity, which was somehow worse than the hatred. "You know what?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You're right. I'll go. But before I do, you should know something, Daddy." I smiled, tasting wine and satisfaction. "I've been documenting your Ponzi scheme for 6 months. Every fake client statement, every offshore account, every fraudulent return you've reported. And 3 hours ago, I sent everything to the SEC, the FBI, and my lawyer." The color drained from my father's face. "You're lying!" But his voice cracked. "Am I? Why don't you check your email? I CC'd you on the SEC submission. Professional courtesy." My mother made us sound like a wounded animal. Victoria looked between me and our father, finally understanding that something was very wrong. "The FBI will probably want to talk to you about the $12 million in client funds you moved to the Cayman Islands last month. The SEC will be interested in the falsified performance reports you've been sending to investors for 3 years. And Preston," I turned to my future brother-in-law, "you might want to call your family's lawyers before you let my father anywhere near the Hall Trust Fund." I grabbed a napkin from the bar and wiped my face. Marcus appeared at my side, steady and solid. "Claire, let me drive you home." "I can drive myself." "With mascara in your eyes and wine-soaked clothes? Come on." I let him lead me out. Behind us, the party dissolved into chaos. I heard my father shouting, my mother crying, Victoria demanding answers. I heard Preston on his phone, probably calling his father. I didn't look back. Marcus drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. I sat in his passenger seat, wrapped in his jacket, watching Connecticut roll past the window. "You really did it," he finally said. "You turned in your own father. He's been stealing from people for years, Marcus. Retirees who trusted him with their life savings. Families who thought they were securing their children's futures. He doesn't deserve protection because he shares my DNA. I know, that took guts. Real guts. Or stupidity. My career might be over after this. Your career will be fine. You're a whistleblower, not an accomplice. The SEC has protections for people like you. People like me. Family members who betray their own blood." He pulled over at a rest stop and turned to face me. "Claire, listen to me. What you did tonight, that wasn't betrayal. That was courage. Your father was going to destroy dozens of families. You stopped him. Preston's family was going to be next. $400 million. God knows how many other people he would have hurt with that capital. But he won't now. Because of you." I started crying then. Really crying. Not delicate tears, but huge, shaking sobs that I had been holding back for months. Marcus held me while I fell apart in a rest stop parking lot, still smelling like wine and shame. "I just ended my relationship with my entire family," I choked out. "My mother will never speak to me again. Victoria will hate me forever. And my father," he looked at me like I was a stranger. "You were always a stranger to them, Claire. They only valued you when you played your role. The second you stepped out of line, they showed you exactly how conditional their love was. He wasn't wrong. I had known it for years, but knowing and accepting are different things." My phone buzzed. A text from Janet Rodriguez, my lawyer. "FBI wants to meet tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. I'll be with you. You did the right thing." Another text. This one from an unknown number. "This is Special Agent David Park. Thank you for your cooperation. We've been investigating Montgomery Capital for 8 months. Your evidence was exactly what we needed. Please don't contact your family until after we execute search warrants tomorrow morning." 8 months. They had already been investigating. My evidence hadn't started this, it had finished it. I showed Marcus the texts. He read them and let out a low whistle. "Tomorrow is going to be a media circus." "I know. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Somewhere your family can't find you? I hadn't thought about that. My apartment was in my name, easy to locate. My father knew where I worked. My mother had keys to my place from when she insisted on having copies for emergencies. I'll get a hotel. No. Stay with me. I have a guest room, and my building has good security. Plus, if reporters start digging, they won't connect you to my address right away. Marcus, you don't have to. I want to. Please, let me help you. So I did. I stayed in Marcus Chen's guest room that night, wearing his Columbia t-shirt, checking my phone every 30 minutes for updates I knew wouldn't come. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face when I told him what I had done. The shock. The rage. The fear. I got up around 3 in the morning and found Marcus in his living room, working on his laptop. Couldn't sleep either, I asked. I was researching whistleblower protections and SEC reward programs. Did you know that if your information leads to sanctions over $1 million, you could receive 10 to 30% of the recovered funds? I don't want their money, Marcus. Maybe not. But you should know your options. The SEC has recovered billions from cases like this. If your father was running a 3-year scheme with the kind of client base Montgomery Capital has, we're talking about tens of millions in fraudulent returns. Maybe more. The number made me dizzy. People lost that much? Not lost yet. If the FBI moves fast enough, they can freeze assets, claw back transfers, maybe recover most of it. That's probably why they asked you not to contact your family. They're executing search warrants at dawn. I looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. In less than 6 hours, federal agents would be at my parents' house in Bedford, at my father's office in Manhattan, at every location I had listed in my 40-page evidence summary. Do you think Victoria knew? I asked quietly. Marcus considered this. About the fraud? Probably not the details, but she's not stupid, Claire. She had to have noticed things. Expensive lifestyle on a firm that wasn't growing. Your father's stress levels. The way he was so desperate to bring Preston into the business. She'll never forgive me. She might not. But that's her choice, not your burden. At 8:45 a.m., I sat in a conference room at the FBI's New York field office with Janet Rodriguez on one side and Marcus on the other. Janet had insisted Marcus could come as a supporting witness since he was mentioned in my documentation and had independent knowledge of the due diligence concerns. Special Agent David Park was exactly what I expected. Mid-40s, kind eyes, wedding ring, the demeanor of someone who had seen enough financial crime to know that white-collar criminals could destroy lives just as effectively as violent ones. Miss Montgomery, thank you for coming in. I want to assure you that you're not under investigation. You're a witness and, as of this morning, officially a whistleblower under SEC protection. What happens now? Now, we execute. We have teams at 7 locations right now, including your father's home and office. We're seizing computers, files, phones, everything. We have warrants to freeze Montgomery Capital's accounts and your father's personal assets. Based on your evidence and our existing investigation, we believe we can trace approximately $43 million in client funds that were misappropriated. $43 million. The number hung in the air like a guillotine. My mother, is she being arrested too? Not at this time. We have no evidence she was directly involved in the fraud, though that could change as the investigation continues. Your sister is also not currently a target. And Preston Hall? His family? We contacted the Hall family attorney last night. They've been advised not to transfer any funds to Montgomery Capital pending the investigation. Mr. Hall 3 will need to provide a statement, but he appears to be a victim, not a participant. I felt a small relief at that. Preston might be pompous, but he didn't deserve to have his family's wealth stolen. Agent Park leaned forward. Miss Montgomery, I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared for what comes next? This will be public. The media will cover it extensively given your father's profile. Your family will likely make statements. It won't be easy. I know. Do you have support? People you can trust? I looked at Marcus, who nodded. Janet Rodriguez put her hand on my arm. I have enough, I said. The news broke at 11:37 a.m. I watched it on Marcus's laptop. Manhattan investment manager arrested in alleged $40M Ponzi scheme. My father's photo was everywhere. Montgomery Capital, Richard Montgomery. Fraud. FBI. Victims. My phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, blocked callers, reporters who had somehow gotten my personal cell. I turned it off. By evening, the doorman at Marcus's building called up to say that 3 news vans were parked outside and reporters were asking for me by name. Marcus told him I wasn't available and to call the police if they didn't leave the property. "This is insane," I said, watching the coverage. "It's like watching someone else's life. It's your life now, at least for a while." My email was filling up too. Most were from reporters, but buried in there was one from Preston Hall. The subject line read, "Thank you." I opened it. "Claire, I don't know if you'll read this or if you're even checking email right now. I can't imagine what you're going through. But I needed to tell you that you saved my family. My father confirmed that we were days away from transferring $30 million to Montgomery Capital for a guaranteed return investment opportunity your father had pitched. If you hadn't spoken up when you did, we would have lost everything. I'm sorry for what happened at the party. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I should have listened when you tried to warn me. Victoria and I have decided to postpone the wedding. She's not handling this well, as you can imagine. Your mother is in denial. But I wanted you to know that at least one person understands what you did and why you did it. Thank you for your courage. Preston." I read it 3 times, then showed it to Marcus. "He's a better man than I gave him credit for," Marcus said. "Victoria will hate me even more now. I ruined her engagement." "You didn't ruin it. Your father's crimes did. Victoria's just looking for someone to blame. And you're an easier target than accepting the truth about her father." The truth. That word felt heavier every time I heard it. Over the next week, the investigation expanded. More victims came forward. The number climbed from 43 million to 67 million. Client statements were revealed to be complete fabrications. Investment accounts that clients believed held their retirement funds were empty shells. My father was denied bail after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk with offshore accounts and resources to disappear. My mother hired 3 different law firms. Victoria gave an interview to the New York Times calling me a vindictive sister who destroyed our family out of jealousy. I didn't respond. Janet advised me to stay silent. Let the investigation play out. Avoid the media circus. But staying silent was harder than I expected. Every day brought new headlines, new revelations, new victims sharing their stories. A 78-year-old widow who lost her husband's life insurance payout. A couple who had saved for 20 years to send their daughter to college. Gone. A retired teacher whose pension supplementation had vanished. These were the people my father had stolen from. These were the lives he had destroyed while throwing wine in my face and calling me ungrateful. Marcus stayed with me through all of it. He worked from home most days, so I wouldn't be alone. He screened my calls, dealt with reporters, made sure I ate when I forgot to. We didn't talk about our past relationship or what this might mean for the future. We just existed in the present, day by day. 3 weeks after the arrest, Agent Park called me in for another meeting. "We have something we'd like to discuss with you," he said. "Your evidence has been instrumental in building our case. The SEC is moving forward with civil charges, and the Department of Justice will be prosecuting criminally. Based on the projected recovery and your substantial assistance, the SEC is prepared to offer you a whistleblower award in the range of $8 to $12 million. I stared at him. "What?" "It's standard under the SEC's whistleblower program. If we recover funds based on your information, you're entitled to a percentage. Given the scope of this case and your role in providing documentation, the award will be significant. I don't want money from this." Janet Rodriguez spoke up. "Claire, let's think about this practically. This award is separate from the victim restitution. It comes from penalties assessed against the firm and your father, not from recovered client funds. You're entitled to it under federal law. It feels like blood money. It's compensation for doing the right thing at enormous personal cost," Agent Park said gently. "Most whistleblowers lose their jobs, their relationships, sometimes their entire social circle. The award is meant to acknowledge that sacrifice." I thought about the 78-year-old widow, the couple who couldn't send their daughter to college. If I accept it, I want to set up a fund for the victims who don't get fully restituted. Can I do that? Agent Park smiled. You can do whatever you want with it. But yes, a victim assistance fund would be well received. So that's what I did. When the SEC award was finalized 8 months later, at $9.4 million after taxes, I established the Montgomery Fraud Victim Relief Fund. I kept enough to cover my legal fees and a year of living expenses, and put the rest into a trust administered by Janet and 2 financial ethics professors from NYU. The fund helped cover gaps in restitution, paid for financial counseling for victims, and provided emergency grants to people who had lost their life savings. It didn't undo the damage my father had done, but it was something. It was more than just standing by and letting it happen. My father was convicted on 14 counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. He'll be 79 when he's eligible for release. My mother divorced him 6 months into his incarceration and moved to Arizona under her maiden name. We haven't spoken. Victoria married Preston after all, 18 months later, in a small ceremony in the Hamptons. I wasn't invited. I heard about it from Marcus, who was invited but declined to attend. She occasionally posts on social media carefully curated photos of her perfect life that never mention where her father is or what he did. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about that night at the Meridian Club, if she remembers throwing wine in my face and telling me I ruined everything, if she ever read the victim impact statements and understood that our father had destroyed dozens of families. Probably not. It's easier to hate me than to accept the truth. As for me, I stayed in finance. I moved to a different firm, one that specialized in forensic accounting and fraud prevention. It turns out that being the daughter who turned in her father's Ponzi scheme is actually a selling point in that industry. I work with whistleblowers now, helping them document concerns, navigate the SEC process, understand their protections. I help people do what I did, but with better support than I had. Marcus and I got back together officially about a year after the arrest. We took it slow, rebuilt trust, made sure we were choosing each other for the right reasons, and not just trauma bonding over the worst period of my life. We got married last spring in a small ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. 20 people, all friends, no family. Or rather, all chosen family, which turned out to be the only kind that mattered. I still think about that night sometimes. The red wine dripping down my face. The 72 witnesses who watched my father throw me out of the family. The 3 emails I sent from the bathroom that changed everything. People ask me if I regret it. If I wish I could go back and just keep quiet, keep my family intact, live in blissful ignorance of my father's crimes. The answer is no. Not for a second. Because those 3 emails didn't just expose my father. They freed me from a family that valued appearance over integrity, status over honesty, reputation over doing the right thing. They freed me to build a life where my worth wasn't determined by my willingness to smile through someone else's fraud, where love wasn't conditional on silent compliance, where I could look at myself in the mirror and know that when it mattered most, I chose truth over comfort. My father destroyed a lot of things in his life. Families, retirement funds, trust, futures. But he didn't destroy me. And in the end, that's what matters most. I survived the worst thing I could imagine, losing my entire family, and discovered that I was stronger than I knew, that I could build something better from the ruins. That chosen family, earned trust, and personal integrity were worth more than blood ties and country club memberships. So when people ask if I would do it again, knowing what I know now about the cost and the consequences, I tell them yes. Absolutely yes. Because the alternative was becoming someone I couldn't respect, and no family is worth that price.